The poor boy arrives without shoes at the interview. Billionaire CEO chose him among 30 candidates. He walked into the Billionaire's company barefoot, his clothes worn, his eyes tired, but his spirit unbroken. While others came in suits and pride, he came with hunger and hope. No one knew that the boy without shoes would walk out with a future worth millions. Before we begin, please subscribe, like and comment. I would be glad if this story goes as far as United States of America, Australia, and even the United Kingdom. I pray may the good Lord bless and preserve you all and your families. Amen. Let's begin. The alarm clock didn't ring because Marcus Chen didn't own one. Instead, the first rays of sunlight piercing through the torn curtain of his basement apartment served as his wake-up call, just as they had for the past 3 years. He opened his eyes slowly, his body aching from sleeping on the thin mattress that had long ago lost its ability to provide any real comfort. The springs pressed into his back like accusing fingers, reminding him of every failure, every setback, every door that had closed in his face. Marcus was 24 years old, but he felt ancient. The weight of responsibility, poverty, and broken dreams had etched lines into his face that didn't belong to someone his age. His younger sister, Lily, slept in the corner of their single room, curled up under the only decent blanket they owned. At 16, she still had hope in her eyes, hope that Marcus fought every single day to keep alive, even as his own had dimmed to barely a flicker. He sat up carefully, trying not to make any noise. The concrete floor was cold beneath his feet, sending a shiver up his spine. Marcus glanced at the calendar hanging on the wall, its pages yellowed and curling at the edges. Today's date was circled in red marker, November 15th. The interview. The one opportunity that could change everything, or destroy what little remained of his spirit. 3 weeks ago, Marcus had seen the job posting on a community board at the public library where he spent his evenings. Chen Global Industries, one of the largest technology conglomerates in the country, was hiring for their management trainee program. It wasn't just any position, it was a gateway to a real career, complete with training, mentorship, and a salary that seemed almost fantastical to someone who had been surviving on odd jobs and food stamps. Marcus had stared at that posting for 20 minutes, his heart pounding, before carefully writing down the application details. He knew he had no business applying. His resume was a patchwork of interrupted community college courses, temporary warehouse jobs, and gaps that screamed unreliable to any recruiter. But something in the description had spoken to him. We are looking for individuals with exceptional problem-solving skills, resilience, and the ability to see opportunities where others see obstacles. Resilience. He had that in abundance. It was the only thing poverty hadn't managed to take from him. The application process had been grueling. Multiple online assessments, a video interview, case studies that he'd completed on borrowed library computers while other patrons waited impatiently for their turn. Somehow, impossibly, he had made it through each round. And then, 2 days ago, the email had arrived. Congratulations, Mr. Chen. You have been selected as one of 30 final candidates. Please attend our in-person assessment day on November 15th at 9 a.m. sharp. Marcus had read that email 50 times, each time convinced it was a mistake, that they had meant to send it to someone else. But his name was right there, spelled correctly. Marcus Chen. Him. Now, as the morning of the interview arrived, reality crashed over him like a wave. He looked down at his feet, at the worn socks with holes in the toes, and felt his stomach twist. His shoes, his only pair of dress shoes, had finally given up the ghost 2 days ago. He'd been walking home from his night shift at the convenience store when the sole had completely separated from a left shoe, flapping like a broken wing with each step. He'd tried to glue them back together with the cheap adhesive he'd found under the sink, but the repair had lasted less than a block. Marcus had exactly $12.37 to his name. Lily's school fees had taken everything else. There was no way to buy new shoes before the interview, not even from a thrift store. He'd considered asking Mrs. Rodriguez, their elderly neighbor who had always been kind to them, but her husband had just lost his job, and Marcus couldn't bring himself to add to their burdens. He stood up, moving quietly to the small sink in the corner. The mirror above it was cracked, splitting his reflection into fractured pieces, a fitting metaphor for his life. Marcus turned on the tap, and rusty water sputtered out before running clear. He washed his face with cold water, the shock of it helping him focus. His reflection stared back at him, dark circles under his eyes, cheekbones a bit too prominent from too many skipped meals, but his jaw was set with determination. "You're going to that interview," he whispered to himself. Shoes or no shoes. The suit he'd borrowed from the community center's job assistance program hung on a nail driven into the wall. It wasn't perfect. The pants were slightly too short, the jacket a bit loose in the shoulders, but it was clean and pressed. Marcus had spent 2 hours the previous evening making sure every crease was sharp, every button secure. If he couldn't afford shoes, at least the rest of him would look professional. Behind him, Lily stirred. "Marcus." Her voice was thick with sleep. "Is it today?" He turned, forcing a smile onto his face. "Yeah, kiddo. It's today." She sat up, rubbing her eyes. Even half awake, Lily was perceptive. Her gaze went immediately to his feet, then to the corner where his broken shoes sat like a monument to their poverty. Her face fell. "Your shoes." "Don't worry about it," Marcus said quickly, moving to the hot plate where he'd prepared her breakfast the night before, oatmeal that just needed reheating. "I've got it figured out." "But Marcus." "I said don't worry." His tone was sharper than he'd intended, and he immediately regretted it when he saw her flinch. He took a breath, softening his voice. "Listen, Lily. Sometimes life throws challenges at you right when you're trying to move forward. That's just how it is. But we don't quit. We never quit. Remember what Mom used to say?" Lily nodded, her eyes glistening. "Every storm runs out of rain." "That's right." Marcus brought her the bowl of oatmeal, kneeling beside her. "This is just another storm. And I'm going to walk through it, literally, and come out the other side. You'll see." She took the bowl but didn't eat, just stared at him with those eyes that held too much worry for a 16-year-old. "What if they don't give you the job because of the shoes?" "Then they're not the kind of company I want to work for anyway," Marcus said, even though they both knew that was a lie. He needed, this job more than he'd needed anything in years. "Eat your breakfast. You've got school." As Lily ate, Marcus went through his morning routine. He shaved carefully with the razor he'd been making last for 3 months, nicking himself only once. He combed his hair with water since they'd run out of gel weeks ago. He put on the borrowed suit, adjusting the tie multiple times until it looked presentable. And then he stood there, looking at his bare feet, and felt the crushing weight of inadequacy settle over him. How had his life come to this? There was a time when his family had been solidly middle class. His father had worked as an engineer, his mother as a teacher. They'd lived in a small but comfortable house. Marcus remembered birthday parties, family vacations, Christmas mornings with presents under the tree. Then his father had gotten sick. Cancer, aggressive and merciless. The medical bills had devoured their savings, then their house, then everything else. Marcus had been 17 when his father died, leaving behind a mountain of debt and a widow who tried her best but couldn't stop the downward spiral. His mother had worked 3 jobs, trying to keep them afloat, until her body gave out. A heart attack at 42, the doctors said. Marcus knew it was really death by exhaustion and heartbreak. That was 3 years ago. Marcus had been 21, suddenly responsible for a 13-year-old sister with nothing but debt and desperation. He'd done what he could, dropped out of college, worked whatever jobs he could find, fought to keep Lily in school and fed and safe. They'd lost the apartment, moved into progressively worse places, until they'd ended up here, in this basement that flooded whenever it rained hard and where the heat only worked sporadically. But through it all, Marcus had never let Lily see him break. He'd been her rock, her protector, her reminder that tomorrow could be better than today. And now, this interview represented the first real chance they'd had in years to climb out of the hole that had swallowed them. And he didn't have shoes. Marcus. Lily's voice broke through his thoughts. She was standing now, holding something in her hands. "Take these." He looked down and felt his throat constrict. She was holding out her own shoes, the sneakers he'd bought her for school 3 months ago, spending money they couldn't spare because her old ones had been falling apart. "Lily, no." They might fit, she said stubbornly. Try them. You need those for school. I have my old ones. They're not that bad. Marcus knew for a fact that her old sneakers had holes in them and provided zero protection from the cold or rain. Absolutely not. You're not going to school in those. And you're not going to your interview without shoes. Lily's voice cracked, tears spilling down her cheeks. Please, Marcus. You've sacrificed everything for me. Let me help you just this once. Marcus knelt down, taking her hands in his. Lily, listen to me. Your shoes wouldn't fit me anyway. My feet are too big. And even if they did, I wouldn't take them. You know why? Because the whole point of all this, all the struggling and fighting, is to give you a better life. That means you need to go to school, you need to have proper shoes, you need every advantage I can give you. That's the deal. But what about you? I'm tough. I've survived worse than a shoeless interview. He pulled her into a hug, feeling her shake with sobs against his chest. Hey, remember the story Mom used to tell us? About Grandpa walking 10 miles to school every day. That was just a story, Lily mumbled against his shirt. Maybe. But even if it was, the point is real. Hard times don't last forever. Tough people do. He pulled back, wiping the tears from her face. I'm going to go to this interview. I'm going to walk in there with my head up and show them that I'm worth taking a chance on. And maybe, just maybe, they'll see past the shoes, or the lack of them, and see the person I really am. The person Mom and Dad raised me to be. Lily sniffled, then nodded slowly. You're going to be amazing. Damn right I am. Marcus stood, checking the clock on his phone, the cheap prepaid one that was his only connection to the world. I need to leave now if I'm going to make it on time. The bus takes forever, and I'll have to transfer twice. He gathered his few belongings, the folder containing printed copies of his resume, a pen, a small notebook. His phone went into his pocket, even though he'd have to turn it off during the interview to save battery. He looked around the room one more time, at this space that represented both their lowest point and their determination to survive. I'll text you when it's over, he said to Lily. Get to school on time, okay? And eat the lunch I packed for you, all of it. Okay. She hugged him again, fierce and quick. Good luck, Marcus. I believe in you. Those words carried him out the door and up the stairs to street level. The November morning was cold, the wind cutting through his suit jacket like it was paper. Marcus started walking toward the bus stop, his sock-clad feet silent on the pavement. People stared. Of course they did. A young man in a suit and no shoes was exactly the kind of spectacle that drew attention. Marcus felt every glance like a physical blow, each one a reminder of his inadequacy. An elderly woman looked at him with pity. A businessman smirked and said something to his companion that made them both laugh. A group of teenagers pointed and whispered. Marcus kept his head up and kept walking. His feet were already cold, the thin socks no match for the concrete. By the time he reached the bus stop, his toes were numb. He checked the schedule. 5 minutes until the next bus. 5 minutes of standing here while people stared and judged and made assumptions about who he was. Rough night. A voice beside him made Marcus turn. An older man in a janitor's uniform was looking at him with something like understanding in his eyes. Something like that, Marcus replied quietly. The man nodded, not pressing for details. Where you headed, dressed up like that? Job interview. Important one, I'm guessing. The most important one of my life. The man was quiet for a moment, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a worn $10 bill. Here. Get yourself some shoes from the thrift store down on Maple Street. They open at 8. Marcus stared at the money, his pride and his desperation warring with each other. I can't take that. Sure you can. Consider it an investment. You get that job, you pay it forward to the next person who needs a hand up. The man pressed the bill into Marcus's hand. I've been where you are, son. Sometimes accepting help isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Before Marcus could respond, the man's bus arrived. He boarded with a wave, leaving Marcus standing there with a $10 bill and tears burning in his eyes. The thrift store. He could make it there and back and still get to the interview on time if he hurried. He could walk in with shoes on his feet, could face those 30 other candidates without this glaring symbol of his poverty. Marcus looked down at the money in his hand, then at his watch. It would be tight, but possible. He started to turn toward Maple Street, then stopped. The thrift store was in the opposite direction from Chen Global Industries. If he went there, he'd have to backtrack, and the buses didn't run frequently enough in the morning. He'd be cutting it incredibly close. And if anything went wrong, if the store didn't have shoes in his size, if the bus was late, if there was traffic, he'd miss the interview entirely. He thought about Lily's face this morning, about her tears and her offer of her own shoes. He thought about the nights she went to bed hungry because he'd given her his portion of dinner. He thought about every sacrifice she'd made without complaint, trusting that he would find a way to make things better. Missing this interview wasn't an option. Being late wasn't an option. This was their one chance, and he wouldn't risk it for a pair of second-hand shoes. Marcus carefully folded the $10 bill and put it in his pocket. He'd return it to that man somehow, someday. But right now, he was getting on the bus to Chen Global Industries, shoes or no shoes. The bus arrived, and Marcus climbed aboard, paying his fare with exact change counted out that morning. He found a seat near the back and sat down, tucking his feet under the seat as much as possible. The bus was crowded with morning commuters, people in business suits and professional attire, all of them wearing shoes, all of them on their way to jobs and lives that seemed impossibly distant from his own reality. Marcus pulled out his folder and reviewed his resume for the 100th time. On paper, he knew he looked weak compared to the other candidates. They probably had degrees from prestigious universities, internships at top companies, connections, and opportunities that he could only dream of. But he also had something they might not, a bone-deep understanding of what it meant to fight for every single thing you had. To fail and get back up. To face humiliation and keep going anyway. The bus rumbled through the city streets, stopping frequently to let passengers on and off. Marcus watched the neighborhoods change outside the window, gradually shifting from rundown to working class to genuinely nice. Chen Global Industries was located in the business district downtown, in one of those gleaming skyscrapers that seemed to touch the clouds. Marcus transferred buses twice, his feet growing colder with each step between stops. By the time the third bus dropped him off 2 blocks from the Chen Global building, he could barely feel his toes. He checked his phone. 8:47 a.m. 13 minutes to spare. He started walking, and that's when the pain really hit. The cold concrete scraped against his feet through the thin socks. A piece of broken glass caught him, and he felt a sharp sting as it cut into his heel. Marcus gritted his teeth and kept going, leaving a faint trail of blood behind him. The Chen Global Industries building loomed ahead, all glass and steel and intimidating corporate perfection. Marcus had never been inside a building like this. He'd seen them from a distance, symbols of a world that he'd never thought he'd have access to. And now he was about to walk in there, barefoot and bleeding, to compete for a position against people who belonged in places like this. For a moment, standing on the sidewalk outside, Marcus almost turned around. The voice of doubt was loud in his head. Who are you kidding? You don't belong here. They're going to take one look at you and laugh you out of the building. You're wasting everyone's time, including your own. But then he thought about Lily, about the promise he'd made to his mother as she lay dying. Take care of your sister. Give her the life we wanted for both of you. He thought about all the nights he'd gone to sleep hungry so she could have enough to eat, all the times he'd smiled through his own pain to keep her spirits up. This wasn't just about him anymore. It never had been. Marcus Chen straightened his shoulders, adjusted his tie, and walked toward the entrance of Chen Global Industries with his head held high and his feet bare. Each step was an act of defiance against every circumstance that had tried to break him. Each step was a declaration that he was more than his poverty, more than his missing shoes, more than the sum of his struggles. The revolving door spun, and Marcus stepped through into a world that glittered with wealth and opportunity. The lobby was vast, with marble floors so polished he could see his reflection, and his bare, bleeding feet. A security guard looked up from his desk, his eyes widening slightly at the sight. Marcus walked straight to the guard, his voice steady despite the humiliation burning in his chest. "Good morning.
I'm Marcus Chen.
I'm here for the 9 a.m. interview for the management trainee program." The guard checked his tablet, his expression carefully neutral. "Elevators to your right. 23rd floor. Someone from HR will meet you there." "Thank you." Marcus moved toward the elevators, acutely aware of the bloody footprints he was leaving on that perfect marble floor. Other people in the lobby noticed too. He could feel their stares, hear their whispered comments. Shame crawled up his spine, but he kept his back straight and his eyes forward. The elevator doors opened, revealing a mirrored interior that reflected his appearance from every angle. Marcus stepped inside and pressed the button for the 23rd floor. As the doors closed and the elevator began to rise, he looked at himself, really looked. He saw a young man in an ill-fitting borrowed suit. He saw bare feet marked with cuts and dirt. He saw the physical evidence of poverty and struggle written across his body. But he also saw something else, a person who had refused to give up. A person who had walked through fire and come out still standing. A person who had lost everything but hadn't lost himself. The elevator dinged, and the doors opened onto the 23rd floor. Marcus stepped out into a sleek reception area where a woman in an immaculate navy suit sat behind a curved desk. Her name tag read Jennifer Park, HR Coordinator. She looked up with a professional smile that faltered slightly when her gaze dropped to his feet. "Good morning. You must be here for the trainee program interviews." "Yes, Marcus Chen." Jennifer checked her computer, her expression cycling through surprise, confusion, and something that might have been concern. "You're the last one to check in. The other 29 candidates are already in the conference room." She hesitated, then lowered her voice. "Mr. Chen, I need to ask, is everything all right? Do you need any assistance?" Marcus met her eyes directly. "I'm fine, thank you. Just had some transportation challenges this morning. I'm ready for the interview." Jennifer looked like she wanted to say more, but instead she nodded slowly. "Of course. If you'll follow me, please." She led him down a hallway lined with awards and photos of the company's history. Marcus caught glimpses of the Chen family, multiple generations captured in formal portraits. He saw an older Asian man who appeared repeatedly in the photos, sometimes shaking hands with presidents and world leaders, sometimes cutting ribbons at new facilities. That must be William Chen, the legendary founder and current CEO. They approached a set of double doors, and Marcus could hear voices from inside. Confident, educated voices discussing the latest business trends and technology innovations. These were his competitors. These were the people he'd have to prove himself against. Jennifer paused before opening the doors. "Mr. Chen, just so you're prepared, this isn't a traditional interview. Mr. William Chen, our CEO, personally designs and oversees the assessment day for this program. He has unconventional methods. Try to keep an open mind." "I will. Thank you." She pushed open the doors, and 29 heads turned to look at Marcus. 29 people in expensive suits and designer shoes, sitting in comfortable chairs around a massive conference table. Their expressions ranged from curiosity to barely concealed shock to outright disdain. Marcus walked into the room, his bleeding feet silent on the carpet, and took the only empty seat, right at the front, directly in front of a raised platform where a single leather chair sat like a throne. "Nice feet," someone muttered from behind him, followed by scattered laughter. Marcus didn't turn around. He placed his folder on the table in front of him, straightened his spine, and stared straight ahead, waiting for whatever would come next. He had made it this far. He hadn't missed the interview. He was here, present, ready to fight for this opportunity with everything he had. And if they rejected him because of his shoes, or his lack thereof, then so be it. At least he would know he had tried. At least he could tell Lily that he hadn't given up, that he had walked into this room with dignity despite everything working against him. The door at the front of the room opened, and a man walked in. He was in his mid-60s, dressed in a simple but clearly expensive suit, with silver hair and sharp, intelligent eyes that seemed to miss nothing. This was William Chen, the billionaire CEO, the man who had built an empire from nothing. William Chen walked to the platform and stood there for a long moment, his gaze sweeping across the 30 candidates. When his eyes landed on Marcus, they stopped. He stared at Marcus's face, then down at his feet, then back up to his face. The room was absolutely silent. Marcus could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. This was it, the moment where he would be asked to leave, where his dream would end before it even began. But William Chen didn't ask him to leave. Instead, he smiled, a small, enigmatic smile that revealed nothing, and began to speak. "Good morning, candidates. Welcome to Chen Global Industries. Today, you will not be sitting through typical interviews. Today, you will be tested in ways you cannot predict. And by the end of this day, only one of you will walk out of here with a position in my company." He paused, his eyes finding Marcus again in the crowd. "Only one. And I will tell you right now, the person who gets this position may not be the one you expect. Because what I'm looking for isn't on any resume. What I'm looking for can't be learned in any university. What I'm looking for is something that comes from the soul." William Chen's smile widened slightly as he surveyed the room. "So let me ask you all a question before we begin. What have you sacrificed to be here today?" One by one, the candidates began to share. They talked about missing social events, about preparing for weeks, about traveling from other cities. Their sacrifices were real to them, Marcus opposed, but they rang hollow in his ears. When it came to his turn, Marcus looked directly at William Chen and said quietly, "I walked 6 miles to be here. My feet are bleeding because I don't have shoes. I'm wearing a borrowed suit because I can't afford my own. I spent my last dollar on bus fare to get here, and my 16-year-old sister is at school right now wearing shoes with holes in them because I refuse to take hers." He took a breath. "But I'm here. I'm ready. And I won't let any of that define what I'm capable of achieving." The room erupted in whispers, but Marcus didn't look away from William Chen. The CEO was studying him with an intensity that was almost uncomfortable, his expression unreadable. Finally, William Chen nodded once, as if Marcus had confirmed something he'd been wondering about. "Then let's begin," he said. "And may the best candidate win." Marcus felt something shift in that moment, some invisible current in the room that he didn't fully understand. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. Win or lose, he had already proven something important today. He had proven that he was unbreakable. And the day had only just begun. William Chen moved to the center of the platform, his presence commanding immediate attention. Behind him, a large screen descended from the ceiling, displaying the Chen Global Industries logo before transitioning to what appeared to be a complex flowchart. "Your first challenge," he announced, his voice carrying easily through the room, "is one of resource allocation. But not the kind you'd find in a business school case study." With a gesture, the screen changed to show a scenario. Marcus leaned forward, reading quickly. The premise was straightforward on the surface. As managers of a new division, they had a limited budget and had to decide how to allocate resources among 5 different departments, each with urgent needs. But as Marcus read further, he realized the complexity. Each department's request was tied to real human stories. Employees facing personal crises, projects that could save jobs, innovations that could change lives. This wasn't just about numbers. It was about people. "You have 30 minutes, William Chen said, distributing tablets to each candidate. Submit your allocation plan and a brief justification. Begin." The room burst into activity. Marcus could hear the clicking of styluses on screens, the rustle of papers as candidates made notes. His own tablet glowed to life, showing the 5 departments. Department A, Research and Development, requesting funds to continue development of an affordable medical device that could help low-income families manage chronic conditions. The lead scientist had lost her sister to a preventable complication and was passionate about the project. However, the technology was still years away from market. Department B, Manufacturing, experiencing equipment failures that were creating unsafe working conditions. Several workers had been injured, and OSHA was threatening fines. Immediate funding needed to prevent more accidents and potential facility shutdown. Department C, Customer Service, understaffed and overwhelmed, leading to poor service ratings. Needed funding to hire more representatives. Several current employees were at risk of burnout, and 2 had already quit. Customer satisfaction scores were plummeting. Department D, Marketing, had an opportunity to launch a campaign that could secure a major contract worth millions, potentially creating hundreds of new jobs. But the upfront investment was substantial, and there was no guarantee of success. Department E, Human Resources, needed funding to implement a mental health support program for employees. Recent anonymous surveys showed alarming rates of stress, anxiety, and depression among the workforce. 1 employee had attempted suicide the previous month. Marcus stared at the screen, his mind racing. Each department had a compelling need. Each decision would have real consequences for real people. And the budget was deliberately insufficient to fully fund everything. He glanced around the room. Other candidates were already typing furiously, confident in their approaches. Near him, a woman with perfectly styled blonde hair was dividing the budget into equal portions. A safe, democratic approach that would please no one but offend no one. Across the table, a man in an expensive suit was allocating everything to the marketing department, his justification already visible on his screen. Investment in growth creates the resources to solve all other problems. Marcus looked back at his own tablet. The truth was, there was no right answer here, only revealing ones. William Chen wasn't testing their math skills, he was testing their values. Marcus thought about his own life, about the impossible choices he'd faced. When money was limited, how did you decide between medicine and food? Between keeping the electricity on and paying for Lily's school supplies? He'd learned that sometimes the right choice wasn't the optimal one, it was the human one. He began typing, his allocation unconventional but deliberate. Department B, Manufacturing, 40% of the budget. Immediate safety issues couldn't wait. People's lives and livelihoods were at risk right now, today. This wasn't negotiable. Department A, Human Resources, 30% of the budget. Mental health was life or death, just as surely as physical safety. That attempted suicide haunted him, because he understood that kind of desperation intimately. Department C, Customer Service, 20% of the budget. Enough to hire a few new people and relieve the immediate pressure, prevent more burnout. Department A, Research and Development, 10% of the budget. Keep the lights on, maintain the minimum to continue work, but acknowledge that future innovation couldn't come at the expense of present human welfare. Department D, Marketing, 0% of the budget. Marcus knew that last decision would be controversial. The marketing opportunity could create hundreds of jobs, but it was speculative. It was gambling with resources when people were suffering now. He wrote his justification. A company's primary responsibility is to its people, not potential profits, not future possibilities, but the humans who show up every day and give their labor and trust. We protect them first. We care for them first. We build the foundation of safety and mental health, and then we grow. Because sustainable success isn't built on sacrificing the present for the future. It's built on honoring both. He submitted his response with 3 minutes to spare and sat back, feeling oddly at peace with his decision. Maybe it was the wrong answer for a business exercise, but it was the right answer for who he was. As the timer expired, William Chen collected the tablets and began reviewing them on the large screen. He didn't reveal names, just displayed each allocation plan one by one. Most candidates had taken the balanced approach, spreading the money evenly or focusing on some mathematical optimization. A few had gone all in on the marketing opportunity, prioritizing growth over everything else. One person had given everything to R&D, arguing that innovation was the only sustainable path forward. Then Marcus's allocation appeared on screen. The room went silent. Several people looked around, trying to figure out who had submitted this plan. Interesting, William Chen murmured, studying it. This candidate gave nothing to marketing. 0, despite the potential for significant return on investment. Who here agrees with this approach? Not a single hand went up. Marcus kept his own hand down, not wanting to identify himself yet. And who thinks this is the wrong allocation? William Chen asked. Nearly every hand shot up. The man who had allocated everything to marketing spoke up. It's short-sighted. That marketing opportunity could fund all the other departments 10 times over if it succeeds. Sometimes you have to take strategic risks. Strategic risks with what? Marcus found himself saying, drawing attention to himself. With people's safety? With their mental health? What happens when that strategic risk fails and we've ignored immediate crises? Do we tell the worker who got injured that we are sorry, but we were gambling on a better tomorrow? You can't run a business afraid of risk. A woman with an Ivy League ring shot back. Growth requires investment. And sustainability requires responsibility, Marcus countered. I'm not against risk. I'm against risk that treats people as acceptable losses. The room erupted into debate, candidates arguing passionately for different approaches. William Chen watched it all with those sharp eyes, saying nothing, just observing. Finally, he held up a hand for silence. Thank you for that spirited discussion. But I think you're missing the real point of this exercise. He switched the screen to a new slide. Every single one of these scenarios is real. They're all from situations that have occurred in my company over the past decade. And I've had to make these decisions, live with the consequences, and learn from them. William Chen's expression grew somber. The candidate who allocated 0 to marketing, he gestured toward Marcus, who felt his face grow hot as everyone turned to stare at him, made a choice that prioritized immediate human welfare over potential financial gain. And he's not wrong. But neither are those of you who chose differently. The truth is, the CEO continued, there is no perfect answer to this scenario. What I wanted to see was how you approached an impossible choice. Did you avoid the decision by splitting things evenly? Did you optimize for what looked best on paper? Or did you reveal something about your core values, even knowing others would disagree? He looked directly at Marcus. You revealed your values. They might not align with traditional business thinking, but they come from somewhere real. And that's worth noting. Marcus wasn't sure if that was praise or criticism. He suspected it was both. Now for something different, William Chen said, and the energy in the room shifted. This test is simpler. I'm going to make each of you an individual offer. You'll come up here one at a time, I'll whisper something to you, and you'll have to decide yes or no. Your answer stays between us, unless you choose to share it. He smiled, and there was something predatory in it. But here's the catch. This test is about elimination. Some of you will leave this room after this exercise. Choose carefully. A nervous murmur rippled through the candidates. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. This was where his lack of shoes would matter. He was sure of it. William Chen would offer him money for new shoes in exchange for leaving the competition. A humiliation designed to reveal his desperation. The CEO started on the opposite side of the room from Marcus. The first candidate, a confident man with slicked back hair, approached the platform. William Chen leaned in and whispered. The man's eyes widened, then narrowed. He seemed to be calculating something. Yes, the man said clearly, and William Chen nodded. You may leave. The man's face went pale. What? But I. You accepted my offer. Please exit through that door. William Chen pointed, his expression neutral. The confident man walked out, stunned. The room erupted in whispers. What had he been offered? What had he said yes to? One by one, candidates approached. Some said yes and were asked to leave. Others said no and returned to their seats, their faces troubled. The pattern became clear. Saying yes meant elimination. But what were they being offered that was worth losing this opportunity? Finally, it was Marcus's turn. His feet screamed with pain as he walked to the platform, leaving faint marks on the carpet. He stood before William Chen, meeting the older man's eyes. William Chen leaned close and whispered, I will give you $50,000 right now, cash, no strings attached, if you walk away from this interview and never mention what happened here today. Your sister needs surgery, doesn't she? The medical bills your parents left behind? This money could solve everything. All you have to do is leave. Marcus's breath caught.
$52,000.
It was more money than he'd seen in his entire life. He could pay off the debts, get Lily the dental work she needed, move them into a real apartment, buy shoes. But he'd still be exactly where he was, struggling, surviving, with no real path forward. This job wasn't just about money. It was about building a future, about proving that he could rise above his circumstances through his own merit. No, Marcus said firmly. William Chen's eyes gleamed with something like satisfaction. Why not? Because I didn't walk 6 miles without shoes to sell out at the finish line. Because my sister needs to see that we don't take shortcuts, even when we are desperate. Because I'm worth more than $50,000, and I'm going to prove it. Return to your seat, William Chen said, and Marcus thought he detected approval in the man's voice. When everyone had been tested, only 12 candidates remained, including Marcus. William Chen addressed them with newfound respect. You 12 refused to compromise. Some of you were offered money, others guaranteed jobs elsewhere, others solutions to personal problems I'd researched. You all said no. That tells me something crucial. You want this position because of what it represents, not just what it provides. One final test, William Chen announced. And this one is the simplest of all. I'm going to tell you a story, and then I'm going to ask you a question. He walked to the window, gazing out at the city below. 40 years ago, I arrived in this country with nothing. I was an immigrant, barely spoke English, had no connections, no money. My first job was washing dishes. I was fired after 3 days because I couldn't understand the orders fast enough. I slept in shelters. I ate from food banks. I wore the same clothes for weeks because I couldn't afford to wash them. And one day, I had an interview for a clerk position at a small tech company. I wanted that job more than anything. William Chen turned back to face them. I walked to that interview because I couldn't afford the bus. It was raining. I arrived soaking wet, tracking mud into their pristine office. The interviewer took one look at me and said, "We are looking for professionals, not vagrants." And he threw me out. The room was completely silent. Marcus felt his heart pounding. That moment could have destroyed me, William Chen continued. But instead, it crystallized something. I realized that the world would judge me on appearances, on circumstances, on everything except what truly mattered. So I decided that if I ever built something, if I ever had power, I would judge people differently. He looked directly at Marcus. This entire day has been a test of character, not credentials. The resource allocation showed me your values. The elimination round showed me your integrity. But what I really wanted to see was simple. Who would show up, despite everything working against them, and refuse to quit? William Chen walked over to Marcus. "Stand up, please." Marcus stood, his legs shaking, his feet aching. "What's your name?" "Marcus Chen, sir." "Chen." William Chen smiled.
No relation, y asuma.
"No, sir. My grandfather immigrated from Taiwan. Different Chen family. But the same struggle, perhaps. Tell me, Marcus, why didn't you buy shoes? Surely you could have borrowed money, could have found some way." Marcus met his eyes. "I could have. But I made a choice. My sister needed her school fees paid. That was more important than my comfort or my pride. And I figured that any company worth working for would see past the surface to what's underneath. And if we didn't, then I'd know I dodged a bullet," Marcus said simply. "I'd rather fail being authentic than succeed by pretending to be something I'm not." William Chen nodded slowly, then addressed the room. "You're all talented. You all have impressive credentials. Under normal circumstances, any of you would be an asset to this company." He paused. "But this program isn't about normal circumstances. It's about finding someone who understands what it means to build something from nothing, to face impossible odds and keep going, to make sacrifices that matter." He placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "The job is yours, Marcus Chen. Welcome to Chen Global Industries." The room exploded. some with applause, others with protests. Marcus stood there, unable to process what he'd just heard. The job. He'd gotten the job. "This is ridiculous," someone shouted. "You're choosing him because he's poor? Because of some sob story?" William Chen's expression hardened. "I'm choosing him because when faced with an impossible situation, he found a way forward. Because he prioritized his sister's welfare over his own comfort. Because he walked into this room with dignity despite knowing he'd be judged. That's not a sob story, that's character. And character is what builds empires." 2 hours later, Marcus sat in William Chen's private office, still trying to comprehend what had happened. HR had whisked him away immediately after the announcement, gotten him medical attention for his feet, and started the onboarding process. But William Chen had asked to see him personally before he left. "You remind me of myself," the CEO said, pouring tea with his own hands. "Not because of the poverty, though I understand that struggle intimately, but because of the choice you made. You could have compromised. You could have taken that $50,000. Most people in your situation would have." "I was tempted," Marcus admitted. "For about 3 seconds, I was very tempted." "Of course you were. That's what made your choice meaningful." William Chen handed him a cup. "This job comes with a salary of $85,000 to start, full benefits, and a signing bonus of $20,000. But more importantly, it comes with mentorship, training, and a real career path. If you work hard, if you continue to show the character you demonstrated today, you could run a division of this company someday." Marcus's hands trembled as he held the teacup. "Mr. Chen, I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything yet. Just listen." The older man sat down across from him. "This won't be easy. Some people in the company will resent you. They'll say you got this position because of charity, because I felt sorry for you. They'll be watching for you to fail." "I won't fail," Marcus said quietly. "I know you won't. Because you've already been through worse than anything they can throw at you." William Chen smiled. "But I want you to understand something. I didn't hire you out of pity. I hired you because you're exactly what this company needs. Someone who understands that business isn't just about profit margins and quarterly reports. It's about people. It's about building something that matters." He reached into his desk and pulled out an envelope. "This is your signing bonus. Take it. Go buy yourself some proper shoes." His eyes twinkled. "And maybe some for your sister too." Marcus took the envelope with shaking hands. "Mr. Chen, why did you really hire me? Out of all those candidates?" William Chen was quiet for a moment. "Because 40 years ago, I was you. I was the one without shoes, without opportunities, without hope. And someone gave me a chance, not because my resume was perfect, but because they saw something in me that went deeper than credentials." He met Marcus's eyes. "I've been successful beyond my wildest dreams. I've built an empire. But the most important thing I can do with this power is pass it forward. Today, I gave you what someone once gave me, a chance to prove your worth." "I won't let you down," Marcus promised. "I know you won't. Now go home. Tell your sister the good news. Start your new life." William Chen stood, offering his hand. "And Marcus? Welcome to the family." Marcus shook his hand, tears streaming down his face. "Thank you, sir. Thank you." Marcus stood in his new apartment, a modest but clean 2-bedroom in a safe neighborhood, and watched Lily do her homework at the kitchen table. She was wearing new shoes, the kind that were actually comfortable and would last more than a month. Her grades had improved dramatically since they'd moved, since the stress of poverty had lifted like a weight from both their shoulders. On his feet, Marcus wore a good pair of dress shoes. He'd bought them with his first paycheck, along with a professional wardrobe. But he'd kept his old, broken shoes in his closet. They sat there as a reminder of where he'd come from, of what he'd survived, of the day he'd walked into an interview without shoes and walked out with a future. His phone buzzed. A text from William Chen. "Board meeting next week. I want you there. Time to start learning the business from the top." Marcus smiled. The work was challenging. He was still learning, still making mistakes, still fighting to prove himself. Some colleagues treated him with suspicion, others with respect earned through his performance. But he showed up every day with the same determination that had carried him through that interview. He'd also started a small scholarship fund with part of his signing bonus for students from low-income families who needed help with basic necessities like clothes and shoes for interviews. Because he understood now what William Chen had understood, success wasn't just about lifting yourself up. It was about reaching back down and pulling others up behind you. Lily looked up from her homework. "Marcus, are you okay?" He realized he was crying, but these were different tears than the ones he'd cried in that basement apartment. These were tears of gratitude, of relief, of hope finally realized. "Yeah, kiddo. I'm more than okay." He walked over and hugged her. "We are going to be all right. Better than all right. We are going to thrive." And for the first time in years, Marcus Chen truly believed it. Sometimes the greatest victories come not from having everything we need, but from refusing to let what we lack define what we are capable of achieving. Marcus Chen learned that dignity isn't found in our circumstances. It's found in how we face them. And sometimes, just sometimes, the world rewards not the most qualified candidate, but the most authentic one. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe to this channel.